Good afternoon and welcome to the BTEC Tech Award in Music Practice Getting Ready for 26 Assessments session. My name is Jeffrey Hull. I'm Subject Advisor for Music and Music Technology at Pearson. Just a few things to start off with. Obviously, we are over the internet, which can cause some issues here and there. So if you do encounter any issues with sound or the slides not changing, the first thing to do is to log out of the session and then try logging back in. That usually fixes most things. If there are continued problems, then you can also message me on the chat. I'll try and keep an eye on things there. But there is also a recording that I can share after the session in the next few days as well. If you do have any questions as we're going through, you can obviously pop them in the chat and I will get to those. There is and should be time at the end to go through any questions as well. So if you do want to ask anything, I will try and find time at different stages to answer things if it's kind of relevant at the time as well. But there is also that time at the end. And finally, I just sort of say at the beginning, I can't really answer any centre specific queries in these sessions. So if you do have any queries regarding your centre specifically about anything, the best thing to do is obviously you can email teachingmusic@pearson.com, or you can book a one-to-one video call with me. There's a link on my contact details on the website for that as well. So in today's session, we will have a brief look at going back and looking on the 2025 series and looking at some feedback there and potentially give some ideas of moving forward as well and how you can approach things with your learners. A look at the post-result services that are available if you do have any concerns about results for your learners from the 2025 series. Then have a look at the requirements for internal assessments for this academic year. Go through training that's available, that's coming up, the resources that are available online, and then some time for questions as well. So looking at the past series, the June 2025 series, there are examiner and moderator reports available. This is kind of a quick overview of those documents with some of the points taken out of there to highlight good practice and where centres and learners can improve on work as well, just to support you in understanding some of those things. So firstly, looking at component 1, you need to ensure that work is clear and accessible submissions of the submissions that you put in for the moderation sample. It should be in a coherent format, trying to encourage your learners to structure things in a way that is coherent and is easy to follow, making sure that they have things like embedded audio or video in their work, or alternatively making sure that if they are using external files, making sure that they're clearly labeled and clearly referenced in the work. Try to avoid using multiple documents or inaccessible links. Moderators do find now and again that the links that they receive are they can't access. some videos and things like that get removed, or they don't have the correct permissions to access those files because they sit in like a OneDrive type file or something like that, and they don't get given the permissions to access those. So making sure that those things are set up correctly. And again, making sure that all files are labeled clearly and easy to navigate there for the moderators. Making sure that learners are covering the requirements of the PSA. So for task 1 in component 1, making sure that they are covering a maximum of 2 pop styles, and then the other 2 that they cover come from the other genres that are listed in the spec, and get covered there. For task 2, ensuring that they do 3 different music products and not 3 of the same thing. That's not to say that they can't do things using the same platform. So for example, they could do an audio recording, a DAW project, and an original song or composition, and do all 3 of those using a DAW, but they are then 3 distinct products, and making sure that they cover it in that way, but they can use a DAW to complete all of that work. Then when you are submitting your sample of work, ensuring that you're including all the correct things in there. One of the things that can hold up moderation sometimes is ensuring that you include the highest and lowest scoring learners in your cohort. Even if they aren't included in the sample, they need to be included, so they need to be added to that sample that's submitted if they aren't included in the 10 that are selected already. And then ensuring that the marks that you're submitting on Edexcel Online match those that are on the assessment records that get submitted as well. And then finally, a bit of advice is to avoid things that aren't allowed. So group compositions for assessments should be avoided because it can't be seen who's contributing what to that composition, so that learners in those cases need to have an individual role and in charge of their own work in that way for compositions, DAW projects. They can, in performance, obviously work in an ensemble. You can see the work that they're doing there, but it does need to still be clear what their role is in that ensemble. And then the other thing that gets noted is using the marking grids, making sure that those are being applied where 0 marks is only applied where there is no evidence for that learner. Even if there is some evidence and there is some rewardable work in there, you should avoid using 0 if it's if there is something rewardable there. And then to guide learners to in component 1 and improve their work and support them through this assessment, encourage students to work through each composition and sonic element for every style, making sure that they've got those detailed explanations and examples in their work, and they're using a range of pieces to use to highlight the features of each of those styles that they're covering. It is suggested to avoid using the sort of one set work or one focus piece approach, because it can be difficult to show all of those features for a particular style by using one piece that are typical of that style. It would need very careful selection if that was the route chosen to ensure that they could select and use all of those elements from a particular piece in that case. So it's encouraged to use a range of pieces for each style to show the examples of features in that style. Support learners to have focused and specific style choices. So avoid broad genres like jazz or pop, trying to go down specific routes or subgenres, because it's very difficult to say what the specific genre specific features are for pop music, for example. They would be much better off focusing on a particular subgenre within that, and they can use then examples and show that they understand those features. Otherwise it becomes a huge broad piece, and we don't want to go down that route. We would rather they focus on specific subgenres in there and have those real sort of good choices of examples that they can put into their work and show that they understand the compositional and sonic features of those styles that they're covering. Obviously, help learners interpret the PSA brief to be creative, ensuring that their three products show that application of understanding of the musical elements, creativity and contrast in there, making sure that their products do develop over the time that they last. So those 30-60 second products that they are producing, make sure that they do develop to some extent, and try and avoid things like repetitive loop-based DAW projects, because that wouldn't score particularly highly on those marking grids in there. It's also important to have that commentary and supporting information to show that they understand and highlight how they've done their work. So explaining how they've used the musical elements and the techniques for the particular style that they're working in for their products. Explain how that piece meets the theme in the brief, and how resources have supported their intentions. They can obviously use reference to particular sections of the music or the product that they have done, using timestamps and or particular sections of a score if they produce something like that for a composition, so they can actually show where they're using these elements and how they have used them, and understand the elements in the use of their work. And the final thing with this is try to aim for consistency across the products, and the written work or the explanations of the styles, because the grids are used holistically. You want to try and have things of equal quality throughout, so it can be seen that it fits in to a particular band in the marking grid. Obviously, if things are of varying standard, it does become a bit of a best fit approach of where it fits in to a marking grid, and which band that would fit in. So you would have to make decisions around that when submissions are imbalanced in there as well. For component 2, there's probably very similar advice to component 1 for centres submitting work, making sure that the portfolio is clear in a coherent format. Again, things embedded in PowerPoints, or make sure files are clearly labelled and referenced in the work that they have done. Making sure that it's in easily accessible, compatible formats, and avoiding files and links that restrictions on them as well. Again, making sure that the requirements of the PSA are met, particularly the theme, and then having 2 distinct musical outcomes for each discipline that they cover, making sure that that meets the time requirement of between 2 and 4 minutes, and trying again to aim for things to be equally weighted, making sure that the performance composition or production work that they do, depending on which 2 they choose out of those, is equally weighted and goes into equal detail in the work that they can show there. Again, avoiding group compositions or production projects because it's very difficult to see and understand which learner has contributed what to things like that. And ensemble performances, making sure that they have a clear individual contribution and making sure that that is audible and they can be seen in any videos that you produce for that as well. And with this component in particular, encouraging learners to document their progress throughout the PSA period, making sure that they are producing milestone recordings and reflecting on things as they go through. So with their development plan as they're going through things, making sure that they are reflecting on that, making adjustments, and making sure that that's clear in their evidence that they are refining things, and it's an iterative process as they're working through that as well. So again, some guidance on how you can support your learners through that in component 2 is making sure that they've got clear planned sequence of development activities for both disciplines, showing how they're going to build those skills over time and that they are working their way through that, reviewing it, refining it, and iterating their plan as they go through. Making sure that they've got technical exercises and milestone recordings. They might have sketch ideas for compositions or rough mixes for production work, making sure that they've got evidence of milestone points going through that, and avoiding recordings of like a lengthy, long rehearsal. So it's making sure that there are snippets of particular points in there as well. Making sure that they reflect on their work through the PSA period, as I've already said in there, guide learners to adjust their targets, adjust their development plan, depending on how they are progressing through the work in there as well. And then ensure that learners are addressing the PSA theme, making sure that they are producing those musical outcomes that are related to the theme, and they're not just reusing outcomes from a previous series where they may have submitted work and trying to rework it where it doesn't really fit, making sure that the work that they do is in response to that PSA theme and it will truly fit and work with that theme that's in the brief as well. And then the final thing is making sure that they have evidence of the professional skills in their work. So this can come across in all the other evidence that they have in terms of recordings of milestone recordings of work that they're doing, and the technical exercises or work that they're doing as they're going through their development plan. They can show their time management, self-discipline, safe working practices, working with others, although that's not going to be penalised if they are working independently. So making sure that that comes across in their submission of the portfolio as well, because it's changed in terms from the previous specification, where in that version it was very much about commenting on the importance of these skills. In this version of the specification, it's about actually showing those skills and applying them in their own work. And then finally, looking at component 3, the external assessment, making sure that learners are prepared and have the relevant skills and knowledge to approach that task. So making sure that they are up to speed on using DAW software and have that experience with it before they go into that time. Because if they aren't and they go into that, they are going to be disadvantaged, because they'll be using some of that time getting familiar with these platforms and trying to work out how to do things. Making sure that the assessment conditions are followed and all those requirements are met. For example, making sure that they only have internet access for the research period, that preliminary period before activity 1, where they are allowed to make one side of notes and gather resources that are relevant for the task and save that in their secure digital folder. That is the only time that they are allowed internet access. In activities 1, 2, and 3, so the initial response to the brief, the actual time producing the outcome, and the evaluation task, they are not allowed internet access unless it is specifically for accessing the DAW that they are working on. So, for example, if they use a cloud-based DAW, obviously we would need to allow that access, but there are the controls around that of they can only have access to that DAW in that time. And we have a document in the admin support guide that details how you can manage that as well. Making sure that you support individual and authentic responses. So making sure that learners are in charge of their own individual response without input from others. Obviously, they can use other musicians to produce their outcome, but they can't have influence from other people to produce the parts that they are creating for that response. So as teachers, you can explain the task, but you shouldn't guide learners in creating their music. Try not to and don't allow sort of sharing of peer feedback in that time, and making sure that learners are working on their own responses, and if they are using other learners to produce their individual responses, making sure that the learner being assessed is instructing the other musician of exactly what they want them to play. And then encouraging that quality check before the final submission, making sure that if you are doing a recording of a performance, making sure that the balance between the performer and a backing track, if it's being used, or the ensemble is being picked up on whatever recording device you are using for that. And that can take a little bit of playing around sometimes and moving things around to ensure that that comes across as you want it. In videos, also avoid obscuring learners behind any music stands or other other musicians, making sure that they are clearly in shot, and that performances are directed towards the camera as well. And then in terms of the quality checks of like DAW projects, making sure that they are starting and ending in the right places. There's no long silences at the beginning or end, and it's clear from distortion and things like that. And then finally, looking on to how you can support learners through that as well, is reinforce the meaning of practical application of musical elements and the implementation. So that difference between activity 1 and activity 2 is where they are, they need to show their understanding of the musical elements and what they plan to do with them when they are writing their initial response, and then making sure that they are putting that into practice in activity 2, and ensuring that they have that clear idea of the features of their chosen genre and piece and what they're going to do with those and how they're going to change it to fit the style that they have chosen for that piece. Again, supporting learners in creating original responses. Encourage students to avoid using large sections of stems or the whole original piece or apart from that original piece. So make sure they have the skills in editing and reworking material, so they could use a stem from the original track or use another musician to replicate that stem and then use samples from that, making sure that they've got the skills in editing that audio and chopping it up and then processing it to fit their new genre and use it in a genre-specific way, and making sure that it fits with that. Because if they are using a long stem from the original version, it's unlikely to fit stylistically and with the new genre that they have chosen. Support effective planning and review. So advise learners to use the subheadings and the prompts that they get in the template for activity 1 as the subheadings and what they are responding to. Plan how they're going to use those musical elements and resources in their work. And then in activity 3, encourage that critical reflection on the strengths, weaknesses, how they could improve that work, and the creative choices that they've made. During activity 2, learners can make up to 6 screenshots or images when they are working to create their music, and they can then use that in activity 3 to support their evaluation as well. So that can be a really important thing to show certain sections of music or how they've used certain elements as well. So they can use those screenshots and images to support their evaluation in activity 3. Making sure that the technical requirements are met. So looking at the required length between 1 minute 30 and 4 minutes, making sure that they are meeting those requirements, and listening back before they've completed and moving on to activity 3 to ensure that there's no distortion, the balance is good with their work there. And then encourage detailed evidence of any work where they have used other musicians to create parts or perform parts for them, to show that they have instructed and created that part for the other musician. So they could, in their activity 3, use images of any scores, chord sheets, or specific instructions that they've given the other musicians, because then it's clear to an examiner what that learner has done, and the credit can be given for that work as well, and show how they've directed and given that part to the other musician to perform. Okay, so moving on to the post-results services. Just seen a question that came in on the chat there. I think this is in relation to component 2. Is there a minimum or maximum number of audio video evidence within a PowerPoint presentation, please? There's no specific number given in the specification. With the milestone recordings, it's suggested that there's like 3 or 4, so beginning, middle, end, and then the final outcome. You've got it there. But depending on what their work is and how they've produced things, the exercise that they're doing, there may be more than that as well. What we do want to see is that progression over time, and them commenting on that as well, and thinking about the iterative process of how they're working. So the post-result services that are available, with components 1 and 2, you would have received, first of all, the draft E9 way back in June, which then on results day you get the final outcomes, and you get the E9 moderator report there via edXL Online. So that is available. That gives you some feedback on your submission, and if there were any adjustments to marks. So that can be a really useful source of things to understand where the moderator is coming from and the marks that your learners have received. There is also principal moderator and principal examiner reports. So moderator reports for components 1 and 2, and then principal examiner report for component 3. They are useful documents to understand the submission as a whole for that series, because it highlights good practice and where centres may need to improve things as well. So that's a useful source to look at in there. There's also Results Plus, which is a free analysis tool. So that has the marks for your learners, and it can also show the average for like the whole cohort of that series, and you can see how your learners are doing in relation to that. So that can be a really useful analysis tool when you're being asked to produce those reports for maybe your senior leadership team to have a look at as well, and comparing your cohort against similar centres or the edXL average or the Pearson average there. If you do think there are problems with the results that you've received, there is the review of marking and moderation process. So for components 1 and 2, it would be a review of moderation, and you would have to submit the whole original sample for that process. With component 3, it would be a review of marking, and you can do that for individual learners to review their marks. That would be sent off to a more senior member of the moderating or examining team to review the work and the marks awarded initially. There is a deadline to request that. So the deadline for reviews of marking and moderation is the 25th of September. So you would need to do that before that date. Okay, moving on to the requirements for internal assessments this year. There are a couple of things that changed in this last academic year. in terms of the release of PSAs, which I'll just talk through in a minute as well. But in terms of the evidence that a learner needs to produce, for component 1, they need to produce a portfolio of evidence with their understanding of 4 different styles of music, using musical examples, those short clips that we talked about earlier. Maximum 2 of those styles from pop music styles, and then they can do 2 from other musical styles in there as well. And then in task 2, they have to produce 3 different music products. Those are 30 to 60-second examples related to the theme in the brief. So a learner would have to use realization techniques so to produce that music. So they could have a live performance. The other options are audio recording, DAW project, original song or composition, and music for media. So they would need to choose 3 different ones from that. Also included in there should be written documents, PowerPoint presentations, or audio-visual recordings. So if they don't write things up, they can talk things through on camera and present it in that way. It should have commentary explaining the composition and sonic features of those 4 styles that they cover, with at least 1 musical example for each chosen style. But as it was advised earlier, they should be using more than that to exemplify each style, really. And then have a supporting commentary for each product, making sure that they are commenting on their techniques that they've used, the elements that they've used, and how that product applies to the theme as well. Now, both internal assessments have the same assessment windows available. So there are 2 assessment windows each academic year. The first window has a submission deadline of the 15th of December. There is a PSA released in June for that. So if you are heading towards that deadline, you want the brief, the PSA that was released in June, and use the theme in that brief. If you are using window 2, which has the submission deadline of the 15th of May, you would use the brief that was released in September. So those dates of the release of the brief have moved slightly from previous years, and that was due to feedback that we received from centres and teachers, and that actually gives you more time and to work with your learners and learners to produce that evidence for each of those briefs, or whichever window they are using there for the internal assessments. In component 2, the assessment evidence required is, again, it's a portfolio showing the skills development of those 2 different musical disciplines chosen from music performance, creating original music, and music production. Making sure that they have a development plan for each discipline, detailing how they plan to progress, the exercise that they're going to use, the goals, and then monitor that progress and review and iterate that plan if they need to. Have that evidence of skills development, so audio-visual documentation of the technical exercises, milestone developments of their pieces, rehearsal footage, draft compositions, rough mixes, all of those things. Have commentary supporting that work, showing any key points in the process, explaining how their work meets the theme as well, making sure that it's clearly organised to communicating that, So they could use PowerPoint with embedded media. They could also talk that through, so they don't, again, to camera, they don't have to write things down if they would be better at responding in that way. And then making sure that they have two distinct musical outcomes in response to that theme, and have a demonstration of their professional skills throughout that portfolio as well. Again, as I said, it's the same windows as component one, with the first window having the submission deadline of 15th December, and then the second window, the 15th of May, and making sure that your learners are using the correct PSA brief for that submission, and making sure that they are well prepared for that as well. So this term we do have training events coming up. They are available online to book now. So on the 29th of September, we have the Getting Started event, which looks at ways to teach and assess the course. There is a marking and moderation training event for component one on the 6th of October at 4 till 6 p.m. Then on the 9th of October, over a sort of lunchtime period, there's a session that looks at your frequently asked questions, and we go through those and answer things there. And then on the 13th, there is a marking and moderation event for component two. So you can book places on those now, and they are available. Useful resources for you available online. This is all under the qualification page, so another Music Practice Tech Award qualification page. Under the teaching and learning materials, you'll find exemplar material for the internal components. You'll also find things like curriculum planners, past training content, and the teacher guide. You can find moderator reports, the admin support guide, which is a really useful document that explains all of the requirements around taking the internal assessments we're talking about at this point, and the rules and regulations around that. There's obviously the specification and sample assessment material that you can access, and then there's also the admin support guide, past briefs, and exemplar material for the external assessment. Again, the admin support guide goes through all of the detail around how to run each activity and the controls around that. Obviously, past briefs can be really useful to go through work and run things as mock for your learners. And there's also exemplar work there as well that you can look at to help understand those standards. We do have around 15 minutes now for any questions. If you do have any, pop them in the chat and I will try and go through as many as I can. Also, if you do have anything that you want to ask and don't want to do it on the chat on here, you can email me on teachingmusic@pearson.com, or you can book, as I said before, you can book a one-to-one slot with me doing a video call on Teams. There's a link on my contact page on the website, and that has my availability on a rolling 30-day period. Yeah, sorry to hear that you had a power cut there. Yes, I can make the slides available, and there will be a recording of this that I will as well. That will likely go on my YouTube channel, which I don't have a link for handy. But I can get that, which I can put in the chat. If you just bear with me a second. So I've just put a link to my YouTube channel there on in the chat. Are the older exemplars still valid on the website? Obviously, they are still there to view, but I would always recommend looking at the most recent series for sort of things, because that will be the best representation. As we've gone through different series, work does change slightly, I suppose. The standard remains the same, but it's we've been able to select different examples and different ways of presenting things, and I think sometimes the way that it's presented has improved over time, which can be helpful in there as well. Yeah, just putting my email in the chat as well. So that is teachingmusic@pearson.com. So that's there. So how do we know by how much our marks get moderated? Is there ever feedback after we respond to our E9 reports? So on results day in August, you would have received a final E9 report, which does give feedback. It doesn't specifically say by how many marks things have been adjusted, if there have been adjustments, but you will be able to see that in edX Online, because you will have your original marks. You will be able to see any adjusted marks that you made after the draft E9 as well, and then you will be able to see the raw marks and UMS that get issued on results day. So you will be able to see all of that and work that out and see what adjustments were made overall. Don't think I missed any questions there. Recently received feedback after the E9. I was a bit confused by it. Does it show the previous E9 report at the bottom and then any additional comments at the top? I would have to check with colleagues on that, because I don't actually, I'm not involved with producing the E9 reports. But it may well be the case that there are some of the draft E9 comments on there, and then it gets amended with your final E9 comments as well. Okay, an E9 report is your moderator report. It's just called an E9. So that is available in edX Online to download. your exams officer should have been sent that on results day as well. And if they haven't, it should be on edXL Online to be able to be downloaded and accessed, and they can share that with you. Okay, not sure if there's any more questions coming in. So here are my contact details. When I share the presentation, obviously you'll have links that work here. So there's different ways to contact me. You can use the contact form on the website. You can email teachingmusic@pearson.com. There's also the phone number that you can use. That doesn't come directly to me, but if you do need to speak to me about anything, you can phone that and ask to be put through, and if I'm available, I can take that call. And then finally, there is the appointment booking service. So that's the video service where you can book a 10-minute Teams meeting with me to discuss anything. And when you go on that link, it has my availability over the next 30 days on a rolling period. So hopefully you should be able to find some time in there if you need to use that service as well. I suppose the final thing to mention while I'm on this slide is you may well have received an email telling you about the new branding for Pearson, so you won't be seeing this brand design anymore really. We are going through a process of updating everything, so you will start to see new branding come out, so just that you're aware of that. It won't change anything for you particularly. Don't think there's any more questions coming in, so I'd just like to say thank you very much for attending. I hope you found it useful, and I'll make sure that recording and slides get sent out as well.